Welcome back, everyone, to Birds of a Feather. My name is Nathan Stroud, and this is episode 10 of your daily Baltimore sports podcast. We're in the double digits now. Of episodes. It is Sunday night after the Orioles game, and unfortunately, the Orioles struggle once again, as y'all can see from the title. They struggle once again, and we're going to go into all of that and more. And yeah, let's just get right into it. Going over the Orioles game, they lose 4-1 to the Kansas City Royals and unfortunately lose their second straight series in a row. The Orioles record now sits at 4-6 throughout the first 10 games of the season. A 4-6 record through the first 10 games, not ideal at all. Not the position that this team needs to be in, man. You know, once you start off negative, and I mean, I've said this before, you would love to start off the season great, so then you have that lead early instead of having to crawl yourself back into playoff contention or just crawl yourself back to having a positive record. But the Orioles are 4-6 on the year throughout the first 10 games. It's been a disappointing start, and I mean, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I mean, it has been a disappointing start, very disappointing. There's been a lot of things that have gone on where you can kind of expect it, and then there's also some things that happen where it's not very expected, but it's just disappointing that it did carry over. And something that did carry over from last season, as it's pretty obvious right now within the first 10 games, one thing that did carry over for this Orioles team was their offense from last season. Obviously, the second half of last year, the Orioles offense was one of the worst offenses in baseball in the second half of last year, and it seems like that is carrying over to this year. This team has been incredibly inconsistent. They've not been able to find any sort of groove offensively. There's not been able to find any sort of groove with their bats, and it's really disappointing because this offense is underperforming, and it's underwhelming, and it's disappointing because this offense has very high expectations to be not only one of the best offenses in the American League, but maybe one of the best offenses in all of baseball. And this offense has just disappointed. They flat out disappointed throughout the first 10 games. Obviously, I'm hoping for the best. Obviously, it is still early in the year. We're only 10 games into the year. There is still 152 more games of baseball left for things to change. And that's the good part about baseball, is that there's a lot of time to change things, but there's also a lot of time for things to go wrong as well. But the Orioles, their offense struggles once again. They only get a total of 5 hits. They only score 1 run, and the 1 run that they scored was off of a wild pitch. So there's no need to go over any sort of RBIs that anyone got or any sort of big hits that anyone got, because the 1 run that they scored was off of a wild pitch in the 7th inning. But this game kind of fell over by the 4th inning. But yeah, we can just start with the offense. Gunnar Henderson leading off once again. He goes 0 for 4 with 2 strikeouts. This was Gunnar's 3rd game back, and he has not been doing well at all. He is batting a .077 to start the year. He has 1 hit so far in the 3 games that he's played, and that 1 hit came from the first game where it was just an infield single. So really no incredibly hard contact for Gunnar. But yeah, it's just disappointing. His strikeout rate has been very high. His strikeout rate was very high last year as well. For someone to be considered a superstar, his strikeout rate was pretty high. But Gunnar Henderson has been pretty disappointing to start this year. Obviously, it was only his 3rd game, and maybe he can get things going in the next series against Arizona. But Gunnar Henderson in this series against Kansas City did not do much. Even in the game yesterday where the Orioles scored 8 runs, he went 0 for 5 with 4 strikeouts. So not a great start for Gunnar, not the start that he was looking for, but, obviously I'm hoping for the best. Whenever this guy plays his best ball, he is an MVP candidate type player, and he is our leader, so, we got to put your faith into him. Going over to Adley Rutschman, he went 1 for 4 with the strikeout. Jordan Westberg, 1 for 4. Tyler O'Neill, 0 for 4 with 2 strikeouts. Ryan Mountcastle had a great day. This was, I would say, the only positive on offense came from Ryan Mountcastle. He had a 3-hit day. He went 3 for 4, and he scored the run on the wild pitch. So Ryan Mountcastle, in terms of offense, literally did it all. He He accounted for 3 of the 5 total hits as a team throughout the whole game. Ryan Mountcastle, 3 for 4, 3-hit day. His average goes up to a 324, so you like to see that from Ryan. Ramon Laureano played left field today. He went 0 for 3. Gary Sanchez, he went 0 for 3. Ramon Urias, he went 0 for 2. Jorge Mateo started at center. He went 0 for 2. And you might be a little confused on why you don't see, a guy like Jackson Holliday or Cedric Mullins or Heston Kjerstad here. Well, Heston Kjerstad came in and he pinch hit for Jorge Mateo late in the game. But, Heston Kjerstad didn't get the start. Cedric Mullins didn't get the start. And Jackson Holliday didn't get the start today. And it was a rubber match. And usually in rubber matches, you like to go out there and play your best lineup to try and win the series. And Brandon Hyde just did not agree and went out there and played probably one of the worst combinations of a lineup that we could probably put out there. For starters, Jorge Mateo is a shortstop. He is a great defensive shortstop and third baseman or second baseman. He's a great infielder. He does not play the outfield. He is not a fielder. And they go out there and they put him at center field. So we have your backup utility shortstop third base guy. You have him going out there and playing center field instead of Cedric Mullins. For some reason, Cedric Mullins was on the bench. I have no idea why. It doesn't have anything to do with analytics because Cedric Mullins in his career is 4 for 9 against Bubic. So doesn't really make a ton of sense to sit Cedric Mullins unless there's an injury going on, which there hasn't been any reports of any injuries or anything like that. I think this was just all Brandon Hyde's decision, and this has been a thing that's gone on with him in the past as well. He just kind of overthinks lineups. He just overthinks things, and then he ends up rolling out with lineups that just don't make any sense, and then you have a day like today where your 7, 8, 9 guys, really your 6, 7, 8, 9 guys are all pretty much just auto outs. So Cedric Mullins didn't get to play today. Obviously, Cedric Mullins has been off to a great start. He didn't play. Jackson Holliday, he's been off to a pretty good start. He didn't play. And Heston Kjerstad has had some pretty good games in the series in terms of offense, and he also didn't play. So I'm a little confused on why none of them played. Just a little concerned on why none of them played. It doesn't really make a ton of sense, especially where, if this Orioles team ended up scoring 7, 8 runs and we won the game, or maybe even if we scored 7, 8 runs and we lost the game, I wouldn't have even really complained. But they went out there and put up 1 run, and their only run was off of wild pitch, so they didn't actually generate any sort of runs themselves. So it is a little concerning. It's a little also very confusing on why Brandon Hyde decided to run with this lineup. I'll never know. We'll never know. They asked him after the game. He said that it had nothing to do with analytics, so I really have no idea what it had to do with. I guess we'll never know. But Brandon Hyde with a very interesting, confusing decision today with this lineup, and it completely backfired on him. No surprise there. But yeah, I mean, even with this offense not having those guys out there, still not being able to generate a single run is disappointing. I mean, it is beyond disappointing. It's embarrassing. It's frustrating as well because now if you go back to a record since last June, I think we are 41-47 in that stretch. So that's not good. That's not good baseball being played. This offense goes out there, completely doesn't do anything. They struck out 12 times as a team. The only person that didn't actually the only person that didn't strike out once was Ryan Mountcastle, who again went 3 for 4. So Ryan Mountcastle, he gets all the flowers for today. Unfortunately, his 3-hit performance wasn't enough to keep this team obviously alive. So yeah, this offense completely disappointed. Just very confusing on what's going on with this offense because also last year, again, as I said in a previous episode, this Orioles team last season grounded out into the least amount of double plays in MLB history. They grounded out into 71 total double plays across 162 games. That is the least amount in a single season by a team in the history of the MLB. because last season we were a very elevation heavy team. We got the ball in the air a lot, which led to us getting a lot of sack flies, which we did lead the league in that category last year. So we were able to get a lot of sack flies last year. We were able to put the ball in play a lot last year, obviously with us being a high up, with us being just an elevation team. Obviously last year a team that hit a lot of home runs. But leading into the home run thing, in the first 10 games, or no, not first, in the first 5 games of the year, this team hit 10 total home runs, 6 of them being on opening day. In the last 5 games, this team has hit 1 home run, and it was the leadoff home run by Cedric Mullins in that final game against Boston. The Orioles did not hit a single home run in this entire series against Kansas City. And it's very disappointing. It's a little, again, it is a little concerning. We're only 10 games into the year. I'm not going to sit here and overreact too bad, but it is just a little weird because this team is disappointing. Obviously, I can sit here and talk about how the offseason, was pretty underwhelming with us not going out and getting an ace or us not going out and getting, the starting pitching that we need for this offense. But, yeah, this team was still expected to be good. This team had the 6th best World Series odds going into the year. I think that was a little high. Even, as a fan of the team, I could say that it was a little high. But to say that we weren't a top 10 team going into the year was crazy. Obviously, everybody wanted to say, the offseason wasn't great, but they still have a bunch of talent on offense. Everybody's going to develop, and hopefully, and maybe if the starting pitching can just stabilize itself and be okay, this team will be good. All we really needed was for the starting pitching, going into the year at least. We fired the hitting coaches from last year. We got some new hitting coaches. And in our minds, it was, okay, as long as the starting pitching is just average, this team still should be pretty good. Because we were expecting the offense to go out there and put a lot of work in. But this offense has been extremely inconsistent, starting off very high, then low, then high, then low, then low, then low, then high, then back to low. So it's like, this offense has just been very inconsistent. You look at this series as well. The Orioles lost the series 2-1 in the first game. We lost 8-2. Then we won 8-1, and then we lose 4-1. So again, the offense is just very all over the place. But going over to the pitching in this game, who will not be getting any blame because they did only give up 4 runs. And to be honest with you, it probably should have been less. Cade Povich is another positive of today. He did let up 4 runs. He did let up 13 hits across 6 innings. But I do love the way that Cade Povich was able to stay in the game and fight through those 6 innings. It wasn't the prettiest 6 innings, but he was able to fight through it. He was able to stay in it. He did give up a lot of hits. He was in the middle of a lot of traffic on the bases, but he was able to get out of it. He was able to fight, and that's what you like to see from a guy who is your 5-man in your rotation. I love the fight from Cade. Obviously, the earned runs isn't amazing. The strikeout numbers are, whatever. But I will say this about the Cade Povich 4 earned runs. If you go back to the first inning, we had 2 outs in the inning, and a ball went to center field. Jorge Mateo misplayed a routine fly ball, very similar to what happened in the first game of the series with Heston Kjerstad, which only let up 1 run. In this game, Jorge Mateo, for some reason, is playing center. He misplays a fly ball, a routine fly ball, misplays it, and it keeps the inning going for Kansas City. That would have been the 3rd out, and then Kansas City ends up scoring 3 runs in the first inning. So after the first inning, it was 3-0, and you just had a feeling that game was over, and then it was 4-0 after 2, and then you kind of just had a feeling that the game was over, which it was. But Cade Povich probably would have given up less runs if it wasn't for the Jorge Mateo misplay on the fly ball. Yeah, to be honest with you, he would have gotten out of the inning, wouldn't have given up a run in the first, maybe, still would have given up the run in the second inning, but who knows what would have happened. This game honestly could have been 1-1, and we would have seen what happens if it went to extras. But yeah, so Cade Povich did give up 4 runs, but I will say the 4 runs were not completely his fault. Jorge Mateo was a big part of that in the first inning for 3 of the 4 that he did give up. But the bullpen came in. This is the other big positive that I'd say of the game. The bullpen came in for the 7th and 8th inning. Sir Anthony Dominguez, 1 inning, 0 hits, 0 runs. Did have a walk, but did get 2 strikeouts. And then Yennier Cano, 1 inning, 0 hits, 0 runs, 0 walks, and gets the strikeout. So, again, the repeating common factor throughout all this is that the bullpen has actually been very solid. The bullpen is doing its job. Obviously, Cionel Perez has heavily struggled, but other than Cionel Perez, this bullpen has been very solid. Felix Bautista obviously has been a little shaky, but he is coming back off of Tommy John. So, we can give him that grace. We can give him the time that he needs to come back and really get ready to go and really get in the zone. But Cade Povich, did fight. He did fight. You love to see that from your 5 guy. But the bullpen has been very solid. The bullpen's been great. And I knew and I was expecting this bullpen to be great going into the year. And even without Andrew Kittredge, this bullpen is very solid. So whenever Andrew Kittredge comes back from his knee injury, if you can slide in Andrew Kittredge instead of maybe Albert Suarez or even a Cionel Perez, this bullpen could look very nice. Andrew Kittredge was one of my favorite additions that this team had. He's a very solid closer for St. Louis last year. But, again, the pitching wasn't the problem in this game at all. Cade Povich gave up 4 runs. 3 of them could have easily been prevented if, Jorge Mateo didn't misplay the fly ball. And then the bullpen came in there, did their job, kept the game in check, kept the game in reach. But at the end of the day, this game goes right back to the offense. They had a chance to get back into it. They only gave up 4. We only gave up 4 total runs. The offense was in this game the entire time, and they didn't come out and they didn't capitalize. And it sucks, and it's very unfortunate. It's just disappointing. I would say that the one word I would use to describe the first 10 games of the Orioles season so far is disappointing. I mean, that's really all you can say. It's unfortunate. But again, there's still a ton of time, obviously, to pick things up for the O's. I still very much believe in them. I still very much believe in this offense. I just think that they have to find their rhythm, which they haven't been able to. They just haven't been able to find a rhythm. It was a lot of win-loss, win-loss, win-loss early on. Lost a few in a row, got that big win they did yesterday, and then today just kind of fell back into that bad offense. So I think that this offense just needs to find a rhythm. And I think same with the starting pitching as well. If the starting pitching can string together a couple good starts, if the offense can string together some good performances, I think as a group they just need to see some rhythm, and they need to see some wins in a row. They need to see some wins getting stacked in a row. That can maybe give them some confidence, and we'll see what happens from there. But again, the Orioles do lose this series 2-1. This is their second straight series loss. So they've played 3 total series so far this year. They split the first one 2-2 against Toronto. Then they lost to Boston 2-1. Then they lost to Kansas City 2-1. So, I mean, I guess one positive to say is that they haven't gotten swept. They haven't gotten swept yet. I might have just jinxed it for the series against Arizona, but hopefully not. But hey, who knows? And going over to the next series we have for the Orioles, which starts tomorrow, is against the Arizona Diamondbacks. And these games are going to be super late because obviously Arizona, the time zone, everything like that. So these games are going to be super late. I think the first 2 games are at 8:40, and then the next game is at like 2:40. But tomorrow is going to be best pitcher on best pitcher. We got Zach Eflin versus Zach Gallen. We got Zach with an H versus Zach with no H. Zach Eflin versus Zach Gallen. Should be a good game. Obviously, the only pitcher, or really there's 2 pitchers that I have a lot of trust in with the Orioles right now. Zach Eflin has my trust, and Tomoyuki Sugano now has my trust. Everybody else kind of needs to earn that trust back, not only for me, but for Orioles fans as well. But we're playing the Diamondbacks tomorrow. It is Zach versus Zach. Zach Gallen, he is 1-1 in his games he's played this year with a 3.38 ERA, a 1.03 WHIP. He has only pitched 10.2 innings, given up 7 hits, has 17 strikeouts across his 2 games. 4 total walks and given up 1 home run. So Zach Gallen's having a pretty good year. The ERA is looking good. The strikeout numbers are looking really good for Zach. So Zach Gallen's having a pretty good year. I mean, he's always been regarded as one of the better pitchers in baseball, so this isn't surprising, obviously. But Zach Eflin, 1-1 again, 3.75 ERA. They are very similar in stats. The only stat that really isn't similar is the strikeout numbers. Zach Gallen has 10 more strikeouts in the same amount of appearances as Zach Eflin. So we'll see what happens tomorrow. We got Zach versus Zach, best pitcher on best pitcher. I mean, you can maybe argue that Corbin Burnes is better than Zach Gallen, but Corbin Burnes has had a pretty slow start to the year so far. And throughout this series, we're actually not going to be playing against Corbin Burnes at all in this series. So we're not going to get to have that Corbin Burnes revenge game on us, because you already know Corbin Burnes, especially with what happened in the playoffs. You know Corbin Burnes would want to come out there and play very well against his old team in the Orioles. But yeah, so tomorrow it's going to be Zach Eflin versus Zach Gallen for Game 1. And then Game 2 of the series, it's going to be Charlie Morton versus Merrill Kelly. And both of that game is going to be interesting. Game 2 is going to be very interesting. Charlie Morton versus Merrill Kelly. Charlie Morton, obviously 0-2 with a 9.72 ERA. Merrill Kelly, 1-1 with a 10 ERA. So that game might be a high-scoring game. I expect it to be with the two guys on the mound. So that's going to be Game 2. And then in Game 3, it's going to be Dean Kramer versus Brandon Pfaadt. So we'll see what happens there. I think the Orioles have the pitching disadvantage in all 3 games. I mean, I think it's going to be like that a lot this year. But what I'm looking for in this series against Arizona, I'm looking for us to really go out there and have a great offensive day. I want the bats to go in Arizona, and I want them to show up and show out. Because, again, I think the key to this team, obviously, is the offense. We understand that the starting pitching is going to maybe be lackluster and not as good. So I think that the biggest thing that the Orioles can do is just string together some good offensive games. Put up some 6, 7, 8, 9, maybe even double-digit run score games. You just got to get back-to-back. You just got to have some consistent things in a row that'll light a fire into the team. Hopefully that'll get their rhythm going, and then hopefully they can move on from there. Because, again, a 4-6 start is not ideal. Let's do a little bit of a checkup on the AL East standings. We're going to be doing this again every single night, looking at the division and how it stands right now. The Orioles, let's start from first. So the Yankees are 6-3. Actually, every team in the American League East lost today except for Boston. So the Yankees are first at 6-3. The Red Sox are second at 6-4. The Blue Jays are third at 5-5. Tampa is fourth at 4-5. And the Orioles, again, for I think the third day in a row, are last in the American League East with a record of 4-6. Not ideal. Obviously, this was the first 10 games of the year. Still a bunch of baseball left to play. And I'm just going to keep repeating that because, again, I mean, it's the truth. No baseball fan base for any single team should be overreacting heavily to the season so far because it is so early and things are still going to happen and the trade deadline is going to happen and that's going to make people better. But speaking of the trade deadline, I think, and again, the trade deadline is still super far away, but if the Orioles don't completely crash and burn and have a record like 15 games below 500. I think that if the Orioles are being competitive and if their record is, maybe a little bit below 500 or maybe a little bit above 500 or maybe even better than that, I think that the Orioles, if they're competitive in the division and if they're competitive in the playoff race by the time the trade deadline comes around, I think the Orioles should be a team to go out and trade for an ace. Maybe not necessarily a true ace, but they need to be a team that goes out there and trades for a certified starting pitcher that we can trust. And one guy that comes to mind is Sandy Alcantara. And the Orioles have been a team that people say should be a team that should go and get him. So hopefully that'll happen. You have guys like Kobe Mayo, where if you looked at Kobe Mayo last year, you might have thought that he was an untouchable player, or maybe someone that we could use to trade for a Garrett Crochet or Dylan Cease, but that obviously didn't happen. So I'm looking at Kobe Mayo now. He's been struggling a little bit in the minors. He struggled a little bit in spring training. I think that his stock is still pretty high, but I think if you seriously don't trust Kobe Mayo for your future, which I don't think that Kobe Mayo has a future on this team at all. I don't think he has a future at first base because I think that Samuel Basallo is going to end up replacing Ryan Mountcastle down the line. So he doesn't have a future at first, doesn't have a future at second, and doesn't really have a future at third either. And I don't think that they're going to want to convert him to an outfielder either. So he doesn't have he doesn't have a role really for the Orioles, just because the team does have a lot of depth. And I think that he'd be a perfect player to go out and just trade with another team. I think that if the Marlins are the team that we do trade with, and we do give up Kobe Mayo for Sandy Alcantara or whatever that package may look like, I think that Kobe Mayo is a guy who can go out there and play immediately for the Marlins. You know, he is a great third baseman. He's a great player. He's a great defensive third baseman. He has a great bat as well. He's been struggling a little bit, but I think that maybe not now, but soon would be the perfect time for the Orioles to trade him before his stock gets too low. So I think that the Orioles are obviously rooting for Kobe Mayo to do as best as he can, because I think deep down in the organization, I think that they know that he doesn't necessarily have a big role with this team for the future, which is unfortunate because I do like Kobe Mayo and I think he can be very good for us. But if you just look at he's an infielder at heart, and we just don't have room for that at all. Because I do obviously expect the Orioles to go out and re-sign guys like Gunnar Henderson and Jordan Westburg and Jackson Holiday and guys like that. But we'll see what happens with any sort of trades. It's just something that I would like to see maybe happen. And thank you guys for tuning into this episode of Birds of a Feather. We are officially in double-digit episodes. This was episode 10. I appreciate all you guys for listening and watching wherever you guys are, wherever everyone is in the world tuning into this. I appreciate all of the support, everyone who's reached out. I'm having a ton of fun doing this, and this is, again, just the beginning. This is going to be a daily thing, and I want to see how far that I can take this show. If you guys like this type of content, make sure to sub up on YouTube, follow up on Spotify. This is a daily show. There hasn't been any football news over the past few days. There hasn't been any Ravens news over the past few days. Nothing really important has been going on with the Ravens, and really with football in general. It's been a little bit of a dry scene, but it's usually like that all the time in early April, because things really start to kick off, a few weeks before the draft starts, which is soon, and draft season is among us. And tomorrow is Monday. It's going to be Mock Draft Monday. This is going to be volume 2 of Mock Draft Monday. So I guess, I'll say the Birds of a Feather Mock Draft 2.0 is tomorrow. Obviously, we did a mock draft last Monday in a pretty long episode, and I expect tomorrow's episode to be pretty long as well. We're going to go over the game tomorrow for the Orioles, and we're also going to be doing Mock Draft Monday as well. So tomorrow's episodes are going to be pretty long. But I appreciate you guys for tuning in and watching. I'm having a ton of fun doing this. And yeah, I'll catch you guys tomorrow. It's going to be a pretty late episode tomorrow as well, because the Orioles game is pretty late, and Mock Draft Monday is tomorrow as well. And it's going to take a while, but, we'll get to all that tomorrow. But I'll see you guys in the next one. Mock Draft Monday tomorrow. I'll see you guys later. Peace out.